Welcome to This Explainer. Right now, we're stepping into a landscape that feels like it's pulled straight out of a grim, dark graphic novel. We're going to explore the architectures of the human soul through the profound and honestly pretty shadowy lens of Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophy. But we aren't just looking at dry academic concepts today. No, we're unpacking a fable about the absolute ultimate battle for human vitality.
Okay, let's dive right into this. We stand at a crossroads, and it's an ultimatum that every single one of us faces at some point. Will you choose the safety of the Emerald Dungeon? In the parable of the Golden Vine, this dungeon is portrayed as a beautifully twisted, comfortable cage of vines that keeps you completely restricted. It's safe, but you're trapped. Or will you brave the terrifying freedom of the heights? This isn't just poetry, guys. It's literally the ultimate psychological test of your life. To truly grasp the weight of this choice, we first have to meet the crushing antagonist of our fable. Enter the spirit of gravity, or as Nietzsche called it in the original German, der Geist der Schwere. Think of this as a psychological force that renders existence heavy, rigid, and totally stagnant. When you succumb to it, it's just this paralyzing dread. It pulls you down, freezing the vibrant, chaotic flow of reality into a lifeless wasteland. So you might be wondering, why on earth would anyone actually yield to that kind of crushing weight? Well, it comes down to a really terrifying trade-off. On one side, look at what we're dealing with, the dizzying horror and the exhausting, fluid demands of making absolute choices in a dynamic world. It's a lot. On the other side, we have the predictable safety of rigidity. The spirit of gravity acts as this dark defense mechanism. When the sheer burden of absolute autonomy becomes way too much to bear, we're tempted to just lock ourselves away in a voluntary cage, completely shielding ourselves from the chaos of the unknown.
And that brings us to the deeply tragic figure at the center of this retreat, the petrified ascetic. I want you to think of mythological figures here, like Niobe, weeping in her grief until she physically turns into solid stone, or the enchanting but completely static Lorelei. To escape the overwhelming existential dread, that deep angst of absolute freedom and self-responsibility, these souls make a dark bargain. Rather than face the anxiety of choice, they actively strip away their own humanity. They choose to become inanimate objects. Because, let's face it, a rock doesn't have to worry about the future. It's quite literally a living death.
But what secret lies hidden in the very language of the stagnant soul? If we lean in and look closely at the words themselves, there is this dark, almost forbidden lore waiting to be uncovered about this state of petrification.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what we're talking about. In German, the word for being stone still or paralyzed is starr. But listen to its deep linguistic root, sterben. That's the verb to die. In this dark worldview, being paralyzed by the spirit of gravity isn't just, being stuck in a rut. Etymologically and philosophically, stagnation is a literal form of spiritual expiration. To be completely rigid is to be dead. But the thing is, this tragedy isn't just experienced in isolation. When petrification becomes a collective movement, it breeds the phantoms of the voluntary herd, which is exactly what Nietzsche called the last men. They utilize this gravity to make their world predictable and totally safe. They maintain a Gemeinschaft, a community of the weak. They willingly trade their individual, vibrant souls for the cozy warmth of a shared delusion. And rather than stepping up to face a dynamic, living present, they just choose to haunt the ruins of the past like spectral captives. The sheer tragedy of this trade-off is absolutely staggering. These phantoms actually prefer the blue sepulchre of their own making, the living death of that emerald dungeon, over the horrific untying, or grausame Entbindung, that true autonomy requires. They choose a beautifully decorated tomb over the painful, messy, but absolutely necessary demands of actual, real freedom. But listen, our dark fable absolutely does not end in the graveyard. We're shifting gears now to the heroic pivot, forging the will to power archetype. This is where the heavy, crushing dread of gravity is finally met with a sharp, triumphant, and unstoppable energy. This is the antidote we've been looking for. Now, what's really interesting here is this idea that to author a new destiny, one must literally shatter the anvil. This introduces us to the active, self-authoring ascetic. Picture the legendary hero Siegfried. He doesn't just sit there and allow the weight of the world to flatten him. He strikes back. He takes the heavy, oppressive instruments of fate and breaks them to forge his own unwritten path. It's the ultimate act of radical self-definition.
This right here is the ultimate clash of our fable. On one hand, you have the petrified ascetic, a completely passive victim retreating from life's fluidity, allowing themselves to be crushed into stone by the anvil of tradition and grief. But the self-authoring ascetic, this hero doesn't hide from hardship. Not at all. They use the bitter ice of fate as a grindstone to sharpen their strength, and then they shatter the anvil itself. So the crucial point is this. The will to power is fundamentally about choosing vitality. It requires choosing the pain of becoming over the safety of the cage. It means actively rejecting the static comfort of the herd and fully embracing the dynamic, terrifying, and completely beautiful fluidity of life. This is the path of the Starfinder archetype, the one who dares to navigate the post-theological cosmic void. When all the old certainties are stripped away, the Starfinder doesn't go hide in a cage, they chart their own brilliant course through the terrifying, beautiful unknown. You simply cannot forge true power while clinging to a living death.
Which leaves us with the ultimate question for you to ponder. Will you surrender to the blue sepulchre, letting the spirit of gravity turn you into a rigid phantom of the herd? Or will you take up the hammer, shatter the anvil, and navigate the cosmic void of the heights as a true Starfinder? The architecture of your soul is entirely up to you. Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you next time.